After the field survey in Kerala, I spent significant time analyzing the data and actually collecting the original texts of the inscriptions and studying them. It was a pretty tedious job, but the results are very exciting. And I just thought this should be shared with everybody. And here I have put my coordinates, email, search for Shankara at gmail.com. There is a YouTube channel, search for Shankara, on which you will find many other videos. So as I said, I completed this field survey in Kerala. The results, the analysis that was done after that, very exciting. By the way, this is a picture, a modern image of Shankara at Mukutala. This is the exact spot where he is supposed to have sat in meditation and then subsequently built 5 temples around this spot in Mokutala. Anyway, there were two outstanding questions which were in front of me. The first one being, how far back do we get evidence in Kerala for the Shankara tradition, meaning the presence and veneration of Shankara? That is the first question. The second one was that how far back do the records of the Swamiyar Mathas? The Swamiyar Mathas are essentially the Sankara Parampara, the Shankara Mathas of Kerala. How far back do these records go? Now, on both these counts, with regard to the Shankara tradition, scholars in Kerala cautioned me that I would find nothing on the ground. Likewise, the Swamiyar Mathas, the records have not been very carefully preserved. So it was a pretty uphill task to understand both these issues, and it was very surprising because there was a lot of skepticism and people cautioned me. Um, the reason I was very surprised is because this is Kerala. This is the birthplace of Shankara, and I hope there will be a plethora of information. In any case, let's see where this heads. The first place is Suchindram. Now, Suchindram was part of the Travancore dynasty from time immemorial, right, for a long time. And it is basically very close to Kanyakumari and Nagarkoil. Right now, it has been um, sort of subsumed into the state of Tamil Nadu since about 1956. Now, I was very surprised that Suchindram, so this is the temple pond of Suchindram, this is the internal view of the Gopuram there, and this is the uh, external view of the Gopuram. Now, Suchindram is curious because the worship practices are all Kerala. The priests are from Kerala and the erstwhile Tulunad, and it's a very curious mix. But Suchindram basically unlocked all the information regarding the Shankara tradition and the Shankara Parampara of Kerala. And I was really surprised to find it, so far down south in the erstwhile Travancore state. Now, what did I find in Suchindram? Now, Suchindram is a very old temple. This is part of the Kailasanatha here. This is part of the Kailasanatha shrine. And the inscriptions here are pretty ancient. Basically, the recorded, meaning the ones that have been deciphered, the oldest record that has been deciphered, dates from the early 9th century, about 823, 827 AD or Common Era. But K.K. Pillai, who has written a monumental, it's a large tome about Suchindram, cautions us that there are inscriptions even within the temple kitchen which date back to the 7th century. This is a very ancient temple. And what we have here is very unique. We have a shrine which is basically a hypatrial shrine, a shrine where an image sits under a tree, which is pretty ancient. It's called Kondreyadi Nathar, under which you have the Shivalingas representing Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Right adjacent to it is Yoga Dakshinamurti, and that gives us a clue. Now, this temple is pretty unique because in both the Tamil Sthala Purana, the Suchindra Manmyam, which is in Tamil, and also the Suchindram Mahatmyam, which is in Sanskrit. And this manuscript was found in the Saraswati Mahal Library in Tanjavur. Um, in all these three manuscripts, there is detailed description about Shankara visiting this place, worshipping Konrayadinathar, worshipping Sthanulinga, very surprisingly witnessing the dance of Shiva there and experiencing bliss. Now, Shankara here actually composes a stotra of about 21 verses, which can be found in the Sanskrit Mahatmya. And in that particular stotra, a couplet from that is inscribed on the rear wall of the, uh, not inscribed, it's painted on the rear wall of the Sthanu Linga, you know, Garbhagriha. There is also a individual, a post, a position called Kattiyam. And there is a person who basically was reciting portions of the stotram under the Kondrayadi and also in front of the Sthanulinga there. And this is an ancient tradition. And the last of this person still survives. But unfortunately, this tradition has begun to die. This is an official position which was created probably by the Travancore dynasty to perpetuate the stotra of Shankara and his memory there. There is just a lot more information in Suchindram. There are miniature sculptures, on the wall of Shankara. And when you take all these pieces of information together, it is very unique to find Shankara in a Purana of a temple. Okay, and when you take all this together, you also find another very astounding piece of information in a very nearby temple within about a few hundred yards. You find several inscriptions about the Shankara Parampara and how it managed this particular Sthanamala Perumal temple and the Dwaraka Perumal temple. That's the temple on which you find those inscriptions. And these are medieval, meaning these are about 1217 onwards, 1217 to about 1231, about 1011 inscriptions about the Shankara Parampara there. The Shankara Parampara here is actually, this is a branch matha of the matha in Thiruvananthapuram. And so this was basically controlled by the Pushpanjali Swamiya of Thiruvananthapuram. And he had a disciple here managing the affairs of this temple. So we have a plethora of information here about Shankara in Suchindra. Now, please keep in mind the medieval inscriptions, the 13th century inscriptions regarding the Shankara Parampara here, because we will refer to them later. Now, this is not alone. I found a continuity sequence of Bhagavati images installed, by Shankara. The earliest one, well before the 7th century AD, at a place called Kukkani Kod Kavil Vanadurga in Malappuram district, in a place in a village called Malappuram, which is very close to Kuruvambala. Very difficult to find this place, but anyway, this is a very ancient image, and there is a legend, and there is a continuing worship tradition. This is a very old temple because basically this was a creeper, a large creeper here, a plant below which this particular image was installed. These walls, okay, and this sopana probably were built about 400 years ago. That is what the family, which is managing it for the last 400 years, tells me. So this is a very ancient shrine in which the deity, well, basically if there was rain, the rainwater basically just poured on the deity. So this was supposed to have been consecrated in the worship initiated by Shankara. So you see a continuity sequence there. This is the family deity, Kuladevi, Bhagavati of Shankara. This particular image has been reinstalled on the outskirts of Kaladi from the marketplace. All right. As I have said in other videos, it is required to excavate, okay, in the marketplace in Kaladi, because that will give us a lot of clues about Shankara. Now, this is the what is now called the Pudankavu Bhagavati. So this is, maybe 8th century or so, this particular Bhagavati. And then you have this. This is the Manika Mangalam Bhagavati temple. This is where Shankara's father was the priest, and Shankara actually is supposed to have gone there as a child. And there are a lot of stories about him entreating Bhagavati to drink milk, which then she drank, and then he got to partake a bit of the milk as well, which the local claim is led him to, to enlightenment. This is a continuity sequence in iconography that we see. There are a lot of old elements in the architecture as well, which help us understand that the tradition of Shankara goes back well before the 7th century in Kerala. So this is pretty definite now that we have. Now, let me go on to the Shankara Parampara. By Shankara Parampara, I'm talking about the Swamiyar Mathas, the Tekke Madam, the the uh, the Tekke Madam, the Muchira Madam, the Trikaikatu Madam, and also the Naduvil Madam. Now, there are inscriptions. Okay, this is a place which I think I should describe now. This is a place called Mitranandapuram. Okay, so this is a temple. There are three temples to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Very ancient, very ancient. The architecture will immediately, sort of make that out that it's very ancient. Now, in this place, very, very close, within 300 yards of these ancient temples, is the Vrindavanam or the Samadhi of Vilvamangalam Swamiya. Vilvamangalam Swamiya, who was basically the grand descendant of, of Shankara, right? Now, this is the Vrindavanam where worship is still conducted by the Naduvil Matham. And then this is basically another 300 yards away is the famous Padmanabha Swami temple of Tirunelveli. So this Mitranandapuram Madam, there's a Neduvil Matham here, one of the Shankara Parampara Mathams, and the temples all are within 300 meters of the Padmanabha Swami temple. And the reason being that the Pushpanjali Swamiya, the Neduvil Madam Swamiya, and the Munchira Madam Swamiya, they reside in this Mitranandapuram complex, and from which they walk and perform Pushpanjali at the Padmanabha Swami temple. By studying the inscriptions of Mitranandapuram temples, of the Mitranandapuram Matams, of Padmanabha Swami temple, of Tiruvalla temple, all the way in central Kerala, of Tiruvallam temple, and several other places, have been able to understand that these these particular Swamiyar Mathams in Kerala managed several temples across Kerala, like Suchindram. Suchindram, the disciple of Suchindram, was actually connected to the tradition of Vilvamangalam Swamiyar, here. So he was a disciple of the Pushpanjali Swamiya of the Padmanabha Swami temple. What you see is a very rapid expansion in the 12th and 13th century of the activities of these Shankara Parampara Mathas, which is Swamiyar Mathas of Thrissur, all over Kerala. So they are managing various temples, as I said, in various places. And Her Highness Gauri Lakshmi Bai also alludes to this in her book on the Padmanabha Swami temple. Now, very important is an inscription. The earliest of these inscriptions comes actually from the Vadakanathan temple, mid 12th century. It talks about the Shankara Parampara, the Yogiya Tiruvadi, which means the Pushpanjali Swamiya of the Vadakanathan temple, and how he was involved in administering the properties and that particular temple, Vadakanathan temple in Thrissur. Now, Vadakanathan temple Thrissur is also where the not only is the earliest inscription found with regard to the Swamiyar Mathas of Trishur, but also I was fortunate to identify an early image of Shankara on the Sri Kovil wall, seated below Yoga Dakshinamurti, just like we see everywhere else, being blessed by none other than Sage Vyasa. This is very exciting information, and I feel all of you should be aware of this. Now, here you have the tradition of Shankara, which I have told you goes back at least to the 7th century AD or earlier in Kerala. And here we have records and we have iconography to tell us that the Shankara Parampara Mathas go back at least, the records go back at least to the 12th century. Now, these two seem to be pretty disparate, I mean, in a sense, disjointed pieces of information. But there is a very important piece that connects all this, and that is the tradition of Padmapada. What is really amazing is there is a place in Malappuram in the north, which is called, uh, which is basically Vettam Pariyapuram. The family there is called the Vemanna Mulapalli Mana. And there you see the shrine, the family shrine, the Narsimha shrine of Padmapada. This is the Sri Kovil walls. This is the Bali Peetham. Adjacent is the house of Padmapada where the families reside. They have extracts from some ancient Malayalam text which talks about the connection of Padmapada to this Narsimha temple and also to the Vemanna Mulapalli Mana, the house, the family. Not only that, in you are all aware from the hagiographies or the biographies of Shankara that Padmapada was a Upasaka of Narsimha. The same Narsimha is propitiated today by the Swamiyars of the Tekke in Trishur. And what is more amazing is that the Swamiyar, one of the junior Swamiyar of Tekke sits in a place called Thiruvarpu near Kottayan, where the Samadhi of Padmapada exists, to which he performs ritual worship daily. It is an amazing sequence. And using the particular deity, the image here, which dates back to the 10th century AD, the image of Narasimha, a very amazing image of Narasimha, one can now put together the two disjointed pieces of information, the early tradition of Shankara and also the tradition of the Shankara Parampara Mathas. You see an intersection. Essentially, they are one and the same. When you take the legendary connection of Padmapada with Shankara, you can now say that the Shankara Parampara and the Shankara tradition, the Shankara Parampara tradition are essentially one and the same, and they go back pretty early, at least 7th century or earlier in Kerala. This is precisely why you see the living tradition of Shankara in multiple houses in Kerala. This is the paternal house, the Kapilli Mana, where they reside. This is a stucco image outside their house, which they worship. This is the family that kept the stone lamp burning for centuries in Kaladi outside at the shrine of Aryamba. And we are indebted, we owe a lot to the Kapilli Mana. This is the male Palur Mana, the maternal home of Shankara. This is where Shankara was born. This is the family that basically nurtured him, where he learned the Vedas, Vedanga, Shastras, where his Upanayana was conducted. And this is the Punnarkot Mana or the Swarnat Mana, where Shankara sang the Kanakadara Stotra to a shower of golden gooseberries. These people are there, they live, they are spreading the name of Shankara and his works, and we owe a lot to these families because they have protected, they are the living tradition of Shankara themselves in Kerala. There is, in fact, if we stop here on the living tradition, I think that would have been sufficient. But all this academic research that I presented earlier was necessary in order to show the skeptics that indeed there is a solid tradition of Shankara and his Parampara in Kerala. So I thank you for giving me the time to go through this. But please go to the Search for Shankara website, help support the excavations that we wish to perform in Kerala and in Gujarat, and please help us fund the excavations and the surveys across the nation, because we need to salvage the structures and the temples connected with Shankara, which are getting destroyed bit by bit every day. You have the contact details earlier. Thank you very much.